All right, it's Friday and we are back here again, even though I've just flown back from Melbourne, not even landed for 2 hours. We are straight back in the studio.
Yeah, well, we're dedicated to this, Mal. We've been largely consistent, so we have to give the people what they don't know they want yet.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And with so much going on as well, it would be remiss of us not to kind of recap a few of the top headlines. So a few things this week. One which caught a couple of small things which caught our eye, small in air quotes, but then also one larger thing as well. My old boss Brett Blundy. From Sanity Days has acquired Best&Less. I saw, which I thought was actually pretty huge. Yeah, well, retail. Someone like Brett, who's kind of been in the industry for a long, long time, is a real true veteran, making a big acquisition for, I guess a brand which you wouldn't have really thought they were a cool brand, but then Erica from the Iconic is joining them soon. Leaving the Iconic CEO and moving over to Best&Less as CEO. What do you make of that, Paul?
Um, Brett Blundy's got a great track record, so that's exciting. And I think he owns still a stack of retail, right? Lavisa and
Yeah,
potentially,
browsing things.
is it Universal? No, Universal Store. That might be
Not
something.
sure.
Look, yeah, making moves. I think that's cool. And Erica, the CEO of the Iconic, moving across is just demonstrates that, as you say, a fashion retailer to a more conservative retailer. The business fundamentals remain the same. A pure play online retailer CEO heading over to a brick and mortar or multi
Omnichannel,
omni-channel.
yeah.
The principles are the same. So good operators are hard to come by, and I wish her the very best. But it is big news.
Mm. And the other one's a legacy business like Jenny Craig as well. Recently, first of all, the US business went into administration, well, declared bankruptcy, and then they said that there was not going to have an impact on the Australian business. And then not even 24 hours later, the Australian business went into voluntary administration.
Yeah, that's sad. And I think, and so Brett Blundy does no longer own Universal Store. So there you go.
Okay.
They did. Yeah, that's sad. And I think, really, yeah, I guess the mixed signals there. I think it says here that, and again, we just sort of read the news that we see during the week and comment on it. But, last week amid reports about potential job cuts, blah, 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 spokesman said the company was transitioning from a brick and mortar retail business to an e-commerce model. That was last week.
Mm.
Now they're trying to stay alive, but nonetheless, what they put it down to here, or one of the contributing factors, was the rise of online competitors.
Mm.
And I don't know some of them, but Ozempic and the rise in popularity of weight loss drugs. Which are also
Mm.
readily available online. So it's interesting. I'm not sure if this is another case of a big brick and mortar retailer just not transitioning fast enough into the e-commerce space. Everybody knows the Jenny Craig ads. They're traditional in terms of the channels they take, and it wouldn't. And I don't know if this is the case or not, but I'm just commenting because they mention, oh, we're trying to get into e-commerce. Now, isn't that a familiar story? Like, oh my God, we're in trouble. We need to go into e-commerce. We've seen it with DJs. We've seen it with Maya, although Maya have done a much better job over the last 5 years, but just really, really slow to get with the times and transition. And then, we've seen, like, particularly David Jones is what I would say is a lost cause pretty much. And it's just interesting that even in these staples of weight loss, talking about e-commerce, and we know there's no surprises there. It's only e-commerce is only 20% or so, so it is still getting bigger and bigger and bigger and taking many scalps along the way. And
Mm.
again, I'm just reading that they mention prominently e-commerce in this decision, so it's another
Probably an example
warning
of not
shot.
moving fast enough.
100%, and whether that's changing into an e-commerce model or anything,
Mm.
the ability to change and make big decisions quickly is important.
Because it's such a crowded space as well. The health and wellness sector has obviously boomed across, thanks to social media, and with so many competitors like HelloFresh, all manner of, the meal delivery, etc. Whether it's My Muscle Chef or any one of those services, there's just so much competition out there, in this space, that I think their competitive advantage was really just having a well-known brand, but
Yep.
potentially that brand not keeping up the times.
Yeah, and then
Speaking of, yeah.
you sort of look at no, they had massive, Mariah Carey and
Mm.
Kirstie Alley, and but then you sort of look at something like the Manshake, which is like, Adam McDougall, former football player, just coming in and doing great stuff online and in stores as well. But just I'm pretty sure that might have been $100 million. Well, $400 million valuation potentially of is what I'm reading here. Sorry, they got a 400. Adam McDougall's Manshake got a $400 million investment. So that's just a different world now. These guys are like getting they're not getting competition from online players. They're getting owned by online players, which is pretty hectic.
Mm. Now, one company which has been on a tear and obviously owning the e-commerce space over the last decade or so, and one which you're very familiar with, Paul, having written the book on them, is Shopify. And Shopify, with their news last week that they have made another round of layoffs. I know it always feels like we're talking about negative news every week, because if it bleeds, it leads. But I'm kind of reading a silver lining in this one. That Shopify cut 20%, are about to cut 20% of the workforce after doing 10% layoffs last year as well. But along with that, the thing which I noticed a bit about this is that when this happened, their earnings, their revenues went up, their earnings went up, their valuation went up, all those things, went up along with this news, not because of the layoffs, but because they're focusing on their core business. They got rid of their logistics business. They got rid of their robot picking and packing business. So they're moving away from that. And this was a sign. They're just going like, you know what? They're distractions. We're just going to double down on our core platform and our marketplace, our app marketplace. That's what we do really, really well. And I like that. I really like the fact that this is this business which grew so quickly. It's like WeWork buying a wave pool company. It's like, what are you doing with that? But kind of recognizing that and going like, hang on, this is pulling us away from the thing which we do really, really well, which is providing a really kick-ass ecom platform. So then focusing back again on that, I think it's a great it's a smart decision. Obviously not an easy decision to do something like this, but I think it's a smart decision, to actually double down on what your core business is, which is something, you and I talk a lot with a lot of retailers, and what we advocate for strongly as well, like making sure that, like what's the thing you're really, really good at. And you see Airbnb doing the same thing, divesting themselves of some of their superfluous businesses and focusing on the core platform. With retailers as well, it's like focusing on the thing which you're good at, which you're a hero for. What's that product which is going to make you famous? And making sure you do that really well without getting distracted. Paul, thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. So you saw that Shopify were talking a lot about the fulfillment network and its logistics arm, and yeah, as you say, a week or so ago they sold it. You'll also have seen certain things that they purchased or were trying to build out for a period of time that have been now shut down. Oberlo, the drop shipping platform, is still around, but they got rid of it. Essentially got rid of it. There's other things that they bought, like Stocky, which seems to be inventory management system seems to be wound down. But I think it's great, and I think you nailed it. Like we see back to basics. We see too many businesses. You and I see a lot of businesses, and sometimes founders have a habit, or businesses have a habit of trying to move too quickly onto the next big thing. And I think we're all guilty of that as well. Like for me, I sometimes distractions. Put simply, when you have distractions and when you try to multitask, you often don't do the one thing, the core thing, very, very well. And there's something to be said for just focusing on one thing at a time. And we see that a lot in e-commerce with businesses who try to go overseas too soon and inevitably burn a lot of cash when they're nowhere near capacity, nowhere near as big as they could be in their domestic market. That is really, really common. Or the online retailer that goes into wholesale or open stores, and those don't work and they lose focus. So I'm a big believer in just doing one thing well, or one or two things well, even to the point of focusing on 2 or 3 things a quarter that you think move the needle, and just doing those really, really well. And I think that, as you say, Shopify have gone back to what made them great, which is, and they're rolling out some really cool features lately. I've been using the Shopify Magic, the AI on the product descriptions, and I tell you, it's so good. Like it is really, really good. And it's not much fun writing the book because you've got to update. I know that I'll be like already since I wrote the book, which has come out in September, I so much has changed on the platform lately, and that's great. It's so many improvements, and I think they're just going back to what they're good at. In regards to getting rid of 20%, that's super sad. Obviously, hopefully all of those people are well and they get picked up again. But and they will, because they generally do hire great people. But it just also does highlight that you cannot stick your neck in the sand, your head in the sand, and just ignore when things aren't going well. You do need to make big decisions to impact that bottom line. And obviously, they've got shareholders and publicly listed and so on, so they just have to take action, and their share price has gone up at over 64. But here, what we have to remind ourselves is when we don't have those stakeholders applying that external pressure, sometimes we shy away from making big decisions, and that's to our long-term detriment. So it is a stark reminder that you got to make big decisions and be decisive. And unfortunately, in that instance, that big decision was letting staff go. But think of the long-term prosperity of the company. It probably was the right thing to do.
And for the platform as well, and also for the customers. It doesn't do Shopify's customers any good if they're being distracted by all these other businesses rather than investing back in the core platform. Because you're starting to hear again, like in the industry, about so many other e-commerce platforms that are coming up now. I'm not going to name any of them on the call, but there's a bunch of others, not just Shopify, where so there's a lot of people who are coming for that market, who identify that maybe there's a gap which they're leaving open. Whether it be I said I wasn't going to name names, but Netcore or or Maropost, or any one of those companies, who are all coming out, really pushing and building out their products as well. So this is a good move, I think, for Shopify to go back and focus on that. It reminds me of Jim Collins' Good to Great, where he talks about the hedgehog theory, where the hedgehog and the wily fox is all trying new things, but the hedgehog just focuses and does one thing really, really well and always survives, and thrives in the end. In the same way that, I think Shopify doing that, Airbnb doing that, and more retailers, again, focusing on doing that same thing as well, figuring out what's that thing they do really well. Let's not get distracted by releasing new products into different categories. Oh, we could do this, we could do that, we could do skincare, we could do this. Just go like, what's the problem your product solves, and solve that really, really well, because it's a big world. And then you can extend from that, in a sensible way, rather than just trying to like do these big leaps, just like pivot from like here to here to here, like in like little 5-degree increments, rather than going like, let's do 180. Let's do 180 straight away.
Yeah. And in practical, in natural progressions, because that's an interesting point, how it applied to e-commerce businesses, you do often see that sporadic release of products that doesn't make any sense at all, or it's my funny one is when going into new categories, as you say, that are potentially new markets or new addressable markets before you've kind of got your stakehold in your current market, and that's kind of what I was saying about going internationally as well. It's sort of like, yeah, I'm all for international growth and I'm huge on product expansion, but I'm a big believer in expanding into your strengths. Certainly strengthening weaknesses always, but I hate, and I'm just going to talk about the NRL here for a moment, the National Rugby League, because they've got expansion wrong so many times, and I can't understand. I do understand it's TV rights expanding into weak markets, Perth and so on, but expand into your strengths. Though that is a great example for me of like, you expand into where your market sits, and when what product your customer wants. And I just think way too many businesses getting, as you said earlier, distracted and going into different areas. And 100%, like the NRL, sure, whatever, gets TV money, but lost a lot of money for a while. Most clubs probably are losing money. And again, it used to bug me. I said, I'm a North Sydney Bears fan. You got a huge junior base on the Central Coast, and then you're going to go to Gold Coast, which is predominantly transient population, and then you're going to go to Melbourne, and then you can go Perth and Adelaide. And it's just like, you'll sell out every game there. And I understand it's TV at play there, but it's no surprise that a lot of their expansion teams didn't work. But I think it's just about expanding into your strengths, rolling out new products when they're winners, and preferably when you've done some research to indicate that there's demand for them, because at the end of the day, the business we're in is just supply and demand.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's really wise words for anyone listening. To expand into your strengths. Let the data, but also letting the data guide you as well. Like, what's the data telling you?
Yeah.
Are customers requesting something? Are they suggesting things? Are there things on
First party
social media?
data, isn't it
Yeah.
bizarre how many brands don't want first party data? Like, oh, what do you think? Like, the common one is, what do you think we should do? And I'm like, I don't know. Ask your customer. Like, do you monitor your live chat? Do you send out surveys? Do you call your customers? And it's like everyone talks about data, but no one wants to ring the customer. And
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
first party. That's the best data.
Well,
And
one thing I always did right away. I every week I spoke to a customer. That was my habit. I made sure I spoke to one customer around the world every single week to
good tip.
understand what they were saying. And I'm going to do a shout out to one of our clients, Keisha. They have the Keisha Club, which is in a really highly engaged Facebook group with all their top customers. Everyone gets invited to it once you buy from them and you join, but it's super active. They're always posting up new ideas, new prints, different things like that, and getting feedback.
That's
Getting
cool.
real time feedback from their customers, and you can almost predict to a dollar. Okay, maybe $1,000, like how a new drop is going to hit based on the feedback from customers.
That's so clever and just so obvious, but nobody does it. And
Mm,
again, like the amount of brands who have got a data studio, Google Analytics, they're in it every day, looking at their Shopify Analytics. They love the data, but your first party data and privacy and things like that, that's vulnerable right now. That's high risk. But the amount of times I'll just sort of say, oh, have you surveyed your customer? Have you actually asked your customer what they think? It's like, no, I don't know what it is, but I love that tip. Like every week, what is it? Speak to one customer
speak to one
every week.
customer. Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's gold.
At the
Gold.
very least, once a month.
Yeah.
I do the same. I speak to clients all the time. It's like, have you spoken with customers? When was the last time we talked to them? And generally, it's like we've never talked to them.
Well,
We answer the tickets.
that is first party data, and that doesn't get
Mm,
any better than that.
yeah, absolutely. Paul, that's all we got time for.
Okay, Mal.
And
Good
before
to
we
talk
leave,
to you.
a happy Mother's Day to all the mums who are listening
Yeah.
today.
Yep. Definitely. I know my wife won't be listening. However, if you happen to be, happy Mother's Day to my mum. But happy Mother's Day to all the mums out there.
Fantastic. Have a good one, Paul.
See you, Mal.
All right. See you.